Hey everyone, it's Business and welcome back. It's time to cover the Tier 8 German battleship, the Bismarck. And this is a ship that you should all know about, of course, because it's freaking notorious. But as far as that's concerned, if you don't know about it, please just stop this video and go read up on it. I mean, the fact that just prior to it sinking, like the actual final battle that this took part in, or actually was more of just a punching bag, I would say. What was it? The King George V dumped over 300 14-inch shells into this thing. That's not including anything else that's shooting at it, and it was still afloat for a little bit after that. So in stock form, the ship really isn't lacking much, but taking a look at the armor, look at that, 32 millimeters on the front. That means you're going to be able to bounce everything that isn't a Yamato right through the front. Has really good solid armor on the side, and of course it has that turtle back armor. And of course this is the area you want to aim for to try to get those penetrating hits, because as you saw in the previous video with the Montana, where the baby come back video, I was able to dump a 32,000 damage salvo into a Bismarck with that. That's really where you want to go. The overall turrets, though, the armor overall on the turrets is really lacking everywhere except for directly in the front. These turrets will get knocked out very easily. You do have a really good amount of deck armor as well, actually, and then you have the 50 and 100 millimeter layers of armor over top of the Citadel too, which is pretty damn good, to be honest with you. So let's get out of the armor viewer and get things upgraded a bit. Stock at 28.5 knots goes up to 31 knots without the speed flag, which is excellent. That is really fantastic. Your range goes from 19.3 up to over 21, which really isn't anything exceptional, but you know, of course it does outclass the Amagi, which is 19.8, 19.9. So of course the big thing is being able to get the hull upgrade, and I would definitely go for that first because you get the improved air defense. And of course this I'll say is a little on the lacking side. It can do okay given the fact that you it's a German battleship. They don't have the best of AA. The Gneisenau really tier for tier is probably the best overall when it comes to the impact of that its AA can have, especially if you're running manual AA. But the Kerr first and all of these, they can benefit a considerable amount from AA upgrades. But for me, it's all about the secondaries. And the good thing about the Bismarck and a lot of the German battleships that, you know, actually from tier 7 up especially, they have really fast turret traverse. So you're able to engage at close range, and when you're throwing down with your secondaries and you're, you know, bringing that armor that is so hard to penetrate as far as like getting citadels and like huge amount of like spiky damage, all of that adds up to one hell of a brawler package. And of course I run secondary mod 2, and that gives a huge benefit to the secondaries. Again, you can run the AA gun mod if you don't want to stick with secondaries, if more staying back is a little bit more your choice. But given the fact that you have 10.6 kilometer max range with your secondaries, you're already back as it is. So all that means is that you have a greater area of denial around you against enemy battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, because you will knock those guys out really fast. So of course go with the rudder shift because you're going to need it, and same with the target acquisition. I do not run concealment on any of my battleships, and there's plenty of reasons for that. But when it comes to how prevalent torpedoes are and how much how prevalent smoke is nowadays, it's really a good idea to run that vigilance and anything that's going to be able to help you out there. So now in this instance here, I've finally got my captain from my turpits up to par, and I got the manual secondaries, of course, but vigilance is what I would highly suggest over superintendent for now. And the reason for that is because of how basically you always kind of want to have hydro active, and while you have target acquisition, mod, and vigilance, that is pretty damn close to being hydro. when you look at things, it's you know, you're going to have a little bit less range on the torpedoes of being able to spot them, but in my opinion that's the way to go for this ship, because you're going to be charging smoke, or at least the opportunity will be presented to you. Whether or not you do it is a totally different thing, but I do run AFT and of course expert marksman, basics of survivability. That is an absolute must because of the fact that you're going to be on fire all the goddamn time. And I have a lot of camos to go through here. Of course, the normal camels, the camels. We have camels now. No, the normal camos are, they're modified, so I have some work done on those to make them look a little bit more distinct by adding a bit of red. I do plan on darkening that a little bit, make it more of a crimson, but it's a fine looking ship. Of course, if you're familiar with the Turpits, you know exactly what to expect with this. And yeah, the anniversary, the Restless Fire, I want to get a super container of these. 250% extra Commander XP is awesome. And I didn't have my Halloween one working there because I hadn't updated the XML file, but that's it for the port. So let's get into the gameplay, and this is something you're going to see a lot of. Tier 10, and it's a very, very heavy Tier 10 match. 3 Des Moines, 2 gearing, a couple Shimikazes. I mean, this sucks. Now, what also sucks is that in a lot of these types of matches, especially when you're bottom tier, this always seems to be the case, everybody plays like a giant puss. And it's domination, it's on Tears of the Desert, which is probably my least favorite map. I would actually say this is a rung lower than Ocean is at the moment, mainly because I've played Ocean twice in the past like 4 months. So I say screw this shit. We're down almost 300 points, and it's 6 minutes into the match. Nobody on my team has done a goddamn thing, and I'm not having any of that. I'd rather just die, get this over with, and go back to port so I can play something else than to be part of this match and be surrounded by 20 ships, well, you know, at the end of the match, who are all railing into me and I can't do anything about it. So I'm going to choose my own fate, and I'm going right in after this enemy gearing. And as you saw, I had plenty of lead time there to be able to spot those torps. Actually, at this point, I believe I was running, I don't believe I was running Vigilance, but I was running Superintendent. I'm pretty damn sure. Yeah, I still have 4 of the heals left, so I was definitely running Superintendent. So there's a gearing, that's nice. Well, now we have a bit of a problem here, as the rest of their team is starting to shoot, and now a Shimikaze shows up. Well, I switched to the Shimikaze because I gotta get that guy down. Even though I know I'm throwing my ship away, I'm still trying to be effective, and unfortunately for me, one of the torps from the Shimikaze ends up taking 17k off and causes flooding, which I can't address for a little bit, unfortunately. So Des Moines pops out, he's still spotted, and I know I'm dead. I've resigned myself to my fate here, but at the same time, why not see if I can do just a little bit more damage, right? So broadside Des Moines, which is never a good idea, and there goes half your health, and then I finally bite the dust. We ended up winning that. It took me throwing my ship away, essentially, and taking out, well, securing a kill against the Shimikaze, taking out a gearing, and cutting a Des Moines in half to get my damn team to move. And that's unfortunately something that happens a lot with this ship, because this is a tip of the spear type of thing. You know, I've mentioned that before with a few ships like the Scharnhorst especially, where the armor on the Scharnhorst is really conducive to just being the brunt of taking the brunt of an enemy team's focus and just plowing right through anyways and getting some damage off and being able to create that wedge so you have teammates coming in behind you. But you can see there's a Tirpitz that's on our cap who's been hanging out way in the back. I looked this guy up. He had, I think this was his 69th or 70th match total. He had no idea what he was doing, and if I knew that ahead of time, I wouldn't have done any of this personally, because I would have tried to kite this out a little bit more. But you know, once you commit, you've committed. And I made a mistake here by going after the Fuso. I should have turned left there instead of turning right, and this ended up costing me quite a bit, because in the grand scheme of things, the Fuso, it's dangerous because of the amount of shells they can throw at me, but the Colorado's going to pen me a hell of a lot more, and I'm saying broadside to him as opposed to the Fuso, which again, it's not the right way for me to approach that. And I also misjudged here. I knew those torps weren't going to hit me if I kept on my particular path, and I damn near I come close to beaching myself here, and I just can't seem to get this hipper taken out. And it's not like the Turpits on my team is helping me out very much either. The guy has full health right now, and we did have a bunch of ships on their cap, and they all got wiped out. I think we had, it was a 4v2, 4 of our ships versus 2 of theirs, and they lost that fight. Yeah, this was a match that we could have won, and I'm switching over to the Colorado because I know my secondaries are going to do the job here against the Hipper. Get 14,000 on the Colorado, but yeah, I'm just a sitting duck here now at this point, and I kept switching my secondaries back and forth between the Fuso and the Hipper. There was a lot of indecisiveness here, and looking back at it, I know I should have turned left to hopefully try to get the rest of my, the guys that were behind me closer to the match and try to, kind of will them forward a little bit if I looped in with them or behind them. But, this, the gun performance on this has been a real sore spot for me, and the German battleships in general have really shitty accuracy. They roll some incredible shots, they really do. I mean, any battleship does from time to time, but more often than not, on an overall average, a lot of times your main battery is more like it's part of your secondary battery, and that kind of sucks, because when you really need it to come through, a lot of times it won't. Actually, I would say the majority of the time. I've had situations against a broadside Atlanta 4.5 kilometers away. I missed him entirely with the broadside. Yeah, I know. So that's battleship life, and really all you can do is try to position yourself to be able to make damage happen when dispersion allows you to make damage happen. Because it's not skill that's the determining factor when it comes to the overall output of damage. When it comes to battleships, it's dispersion, and you are always at the mercy of RNG, no matter how good you are or how good you think you are. So unfortunately, the Bismarck is certainly a dose of reality there, and actually, more to the point, I think the Gneisenau now is, and it kind of just gets driven home a little bit more often with the Bismarck, because you're going to be facing Yamatos and Montanas and Kurfürsts, and you're going to get wrecked by them from time to time, but you're going to be able to do some work against them too. I've had some good salvos against all 3 of those types of ships, and the fact of the matter is, though, it's destroyers that are always the main concern. And I say that because this ship lacks a considerable amount of torpedo protection. So that Shimakaze torp that you saw earlier, for instance, the Shimakaze, has 21,000 max damage around, with those various torpedoes, and it did over 17,000 damage. That is not nearly enough to be able to of a damage mitigation on your torpedo belt to be able to sustain much, and that's why I really stress the stacking of Vigilance, Hydro, and also the target acquisition gear, because it is incredibly important to see those torpedoes as far off as you possibly can to be able to react to them as soon as possible, so you don't have to have 1/3 of your life taken off by a single torpedo. I mean, try to just think about that for a moment. You're talking almost 1/3 of your life from one torpedo. And this thing does get wrecked by bombers, by torpedo bombers, and, well, dive bombers too, of course, as the Chapiev meets a nice little end there, which, by the way, the Chapiev is very susceptible to getting wrecked by the ship. I don't know why, that's just how it is. But this Indianapolis over here, he just took a full broadside from the Amagi, and he's trying to get as close as he can, as fast as he can, to get the ram off before he gets reloaded, and sure enough he does. That's a good trade. But the problem is the Fubuki's still active, and I'm going to hit the brakes here right after I pop Hydro, because if I were him, I would be setting up an ambush right on the other side of this island, and you see me start turning in. I got the enemy hipper down here who just ended up being a giant pain in my ass the entire match. Not doing much damage, but whenever I shot at him, I could never do anything other than penetrate, well, overpens actually, but sure enough, the Fubuki's there, and this match is just really not going well. But in general, the Bismarck, when it comes to it's like, yes, cruisers and battleships, they're a serious threat. Of course they are. And as I take shots against the Atlanta that's on their cap, the fact of the matter is destroyers are always going to be, in my opinion, the primary concern for anybody who doesn't want to meet an extremely fast and early end in any match. Now, there certainly is a reason why I'm mentioning this now, because the enemy still has 4 destroyers. They're all over our cap, and I barely get that reset off in time on the Baron to make sure that we can buy the time to be able to get back there and make something happen here. So Fubuki is still chasing us with torps, the Hipper is still to the south harassing, there's a Sims as well as a Farragut and the Baron right ahead of me. I have the secondaries going off against the Sims, and I'm focusing my main battery against the Baron because he said he was going to ram me. Well, I gotta make sure that that's not going to happen. Now, the smoke in the back was a pretty bad move by the Kiev because he just told me exactly where he is, and the best part is he's going to stay there because that's what people do. So all that's doing is making sure that he's going to be within my secondary range. So my secondaries finish off the Sims right there, and I did hit with the front 2 guns, and I knew right when I fired that, I knew those were going to bounce based off of the angle that my ship was at, the Baron was at. I mean, the Baron's got pretty damn good armor, but not when you start getting on the side like this. And I have my secondaries going after him, of course, and I finally hit my repair button so I can see where the hell I'm going to be shooting here. As I free shoot this, get some nice damage there, about 15,000, and there we go. Aim slightly high, of course. Try to get that penetrating damage, which all 8 shells hit, and all 8 shells did penetrating damage, so that guy stood no chance, certainly not at that range against this ship. So I still have quite a lot of health left, all things considered. I normally in this stage of any given match I'm hurting a little bit more, but the Farragut is just sitting there. I do have my Hydro active. I launched my shells from the front turrets, and I decide to hold off on the rears, not to get the Kraken with my secondaries, but because I wanted to swing around and try to get rid of this Kiev as fast as possible and have my rears ready to go. So he's spotted, and I have him targeted now. You should have my, there go my secondaries. So, and loading up my front turrets, and I'm not waiting at all to have those secondaries do the work. I'm letting my main battery get involved. I do get 2 overpens, but my secondaries finish him off too. So the Hipper is still to the south, and I figure this is probably the last chance I'm going to be able to have here to do anything against this Hipper. And unfortunately, my rear turrets are not in the position to be able to fire at the moment, and I did get the fronts off. Did really nothing to him again, and now there's more Fubuki torps to dodge. So this guy's really pissing me off, and eventually end up finding him. So yay! Go ahead and finally get this guy spotted, and I decided to come after him instead of going after the Hipper. I thought the Hipper would turn north. That ended up not being the case, and it wouldn't have mattered anyways because the enemy team had an AFK New Mexico, and there just was not enough time for this. And this guy's so damn close to death, but the Atago on my team manages to get the kill there with the fire. So that was a really shitty loss. Did everything I could there, ended up with 150,000 damage, 6 kills, and a lot of secondary action for sure. And one thing is that I want to just mention now, as this match also seems to be very similar to the previous one where we don't have any caps, we're down hundreds of tickets, and you know, finally my team's starting to get involved here, is when I start showing you the screenshots later, pay attention to, and I'm including as many as I could find, pay attention to the secondary battery hits, the damage they do, and the fires that they cause, because it's amazing. I actually got Witherer for the first time in the Battleship with this against an Iowa. It was absolutely hilarious. Did 68,000 damage from the secondaries alone. And, well, actually, I think I did shoot some HE, but it didn't do nearly as much as the secondaries. But anyways, I managed to take out the enemy Fubuki there because he had launched all 3 racks. I know I've got plenty of time to be able to jump in with Hydro active and be able to take him on and let my secondaries do some work. So now it's time to play keep away against a Scharnhorst. The problem is there's a New Mexico off to my starboard side, right there. There's also a Gneisenau off to the, my port side, who is just south of A. Now, my anticipation is, as I finish off this Scharnhorst, is that I'm going to have to cut left because the Gneisenau is going to stay close there to the big island to my port and dump torps. And sure enough, it's around that time that I start engaging the New Mexico here, and this actually happened to be the best case scenario for me, as I ended up dumping about 15k into him. The best case scenario was that I would face a battleship that had a longer reload time, and there's the torps, as expected, because against the New Mexico's 35-second reload, I'm able to make a turn, or at least most of a turn, and you know, mitigate some of this damage, because the New Mexico, again, with the amount of shells that it can dump, it actually can do a hell of a lot of damage to the ship, because like all the German battleships at, well, I would say at tier 8, 9, and 10, the Scharnhorst and Gneisenau are a little bit more tough, I think, because they sit a little lower in the water. But with the Tirpitz, the Bismarck, the Friedrich, and also the Kurfürst, from what I've tested, they take a huge amount of damage from any angle. They take penetrating hits all over the place, and that's part of the reason why they're balanced, in my opinion. The armor is excellent, but it does best up close. At long range, that's when they're really susceptible, or, you know, at the mid-range fight, say like 14, 13 kilometers, something like that, where you're able to still have really good accuracy, potentially, and the shell dispersion come right where you need it to at the gap. And look at that, the Baron just rocked that Gneisenau for 21, I think about 21,000 damage there, so really good shot. And this guy was a huge help, the guy just to my left here. And I know torps are coming, of course, again. I think this is now the 3rd time I've had to anticipate this guy's torps, but you know, if you hit at the deck and the top of the bell armor, the side armor, you're going to do a shitload of damage against these ships. The Tirpitz, the Bismarck, the Friedrich, the Kurfürst, they're all soft. They're incredibly tough, but they're still rather soft. Very close dodge. And it's weird to describe a ship that way, but, you know, it has excellent armor, yes, but it does best up close. And again, that's why people are always so surprised when, oh my god, I citadel the Tirpitz. Well, that's great, you know? You're at 22 kilometers. What do you expect? That armor's not going to work the same at that range as it does close up, because that's not what it's designed for. These were designed to be the North Sea, like the rough sea, close quarters type of nonsense. That's why it took that many damn hits from the King George in real life, and they actually do a pretty good job of expressing that in the game. So 319 secondary hits, 223,000 damage, 2,800 base XP, and look at this, 38,000 damage from the secondary hits, and another 38,000 from the fires. I have a lot of defeats with this ship, because I push up when nobody else will. I put myself in situations where I feel I need to I'm the one that can make the difference. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, that ends up leaving me stranded and in positions that nobody's going to be able to help me because they're not doing anything. There's the Witherer, 68,000 damage there, and oh yeah, that was all secondaries, which is just astonishing. But the ship certainly has some drawbacks, and again, I really think that the worst place it can be against an enemy battleship. And yes, that's a 16,000 damage victory where I died first because I got completely focused, and nobody was there to help me at the start of a match, which is really shitty to say. But anyways, it needs help to be able to get you into the position where you can do the most damage. And against enemy battleships, if you're outside your secondary range, you're probably going to be in some trouble, because if those secondaries aren't contributing to making his repair go on cooldown, his heal on cooldown, then you're probably at a disadvantage. And at least that's a way I like to think about it, because it puts me in a mindset of having to make something happen. And I think that's where the ship shines, is when you get in close to those gnarly knife fights and you're duking it out with a couple other battleships or a couple other ships, whatever they may be, and you come out the victor. I mean, you feel like you've been in a slugfest, and this ship is the one that is like the heavyweight champ. Of course, there are higher end ships that do it just as well, or if not better, but we'll get to those later. Anyways, I will be streaming today, and thank you for watching the video today on the Bismarck. I'll probably play a few matches of it today, but I hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving. I'll be doing some giveaways for the stream, and it's going to be a long one. I'm not going to be playing just Warships. Most likely going to be doing some of the Division and trying out the survival mode for the first time. Yay! Or maybe not yay. And also plenty of BF1. I do have the gearing and the Belfast coming up soon. And thank you for watching today. Hope you have a great Thanksgiving. I'll see you back here soon. Take care.